All right, here we go. Want to talk briefly today about acids and bases in the body, and go ahead and go straight to the notes now, so we can make the most out of our time. You know, people are like, why are acids and bases important? And more importantly, what the heck is an acid or a base? Well, first thing first, something that you got to understand is that an issue. All right. And our issue is that our body has to maintain something called a proper pH. And pH is nothing more than a measurement of how many hydrogen ions happen to be in a solution. So when you say that something's more acidic, what you're telling me is that that solution, that bucket of whatever it is, that solution has a pretty high concentration of hydrogen ions in it. If you tell me that that bucket is a lot less acidic and more alkaline or more basic, then that what you're telling me that that solution has far less hydrogen ions in it. Now, your body likes to keep a blood pH of about 7.35 to 7.45, which doesn't really mean much to anybody until you tell them that there is a pH scale. Usually, commonly, we refer to the pH scale as being from 0 to 14, with the number 7 being neutral. Therefore, anything with a pH of 7 is neutral. It's neither an acid nor a base. Okay, it's neither. It's smack dab in the middle. It's neutral. So if we go higher than 7, like 8, 9, and 10, we typically say that that substance is basic. Okay, because the higher up the pH level you go, the smaller the concentration of hydrogen ions you're saying there. You'll notice that on the slide, it says that the pH is inversely related to the hydrogen concentration. It's inversely related to the hydrogen concentration. So when the pH goes up, the concentration of hydrogen ions goes down. Therefore, a pH of 9 is far more alkaline and basic than a pH of 6 because it's inversely proportional. Remember, that means if the pH is high, that means the hydrogen concentration is very low. And if the pH is very low, then that means that the hydrogen concentration is really high. For example, the pH of the stomach acid that you have inside of you right now is pretty daggum low. All right. It's somewhere between 1 and 2. That's some pretty potent stuff. So it's got a huge concentration of hydrogen ions, whereas your blood is between 7.35 and 7.45, which means that if that is the case, that, well, yeah, that's it. Um, I thought I thought there was some more I wanted to say on that, but then I decided not to. I don't want to get us confused before we get any further in. Now, you can mess with anybody's pH balance just by some basic things. I mean, I can add some acids, I can add some bases, I can take away acids, I can take away bases. Blood is going to change. Breathe. What you got to remember is that you're exhaling carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide actually drops the pH of your blood. So when you breathe out carbon dioxide, you allow your pH of your blood to stay normal. And then there's chemical buffers that can change the whole game up. So there's two types of acids. Since we're going to talk about acids and bases, there's two types of acids. One type of acid is the kind of stuff that you make. I don't mean make it in a lab. I mean, you make it in your cells, like lactic acid and phosphoric acid. Notice that lactic acid comes from anaerobic cellular respiration, which is a big fancy way of saying glycolysis products that never make it into the mitochondria. Because through glycolysis, you make pyruvate. Pyruvate is not bad, as long as pyruvate ultimately gets shuttled into some mitochondria so you can make some ATP. But the pyruvate that never make it into some mitochondria that wind up staying out there for a little too long, it converts into lactic acid. And is an acid, so therefore it can drop the pH, and it can drop the pH inside of a muscle cell, making it difficult for that muscle cell to function. Um, we've got phosphoric acid that comes from nucleic acid metabolism, and we don't want that stuff either because it drops the pH. So we try to regulate this by using the kidney. The kidney in itself, what it will do is it will help us get rid of some of this extra fixed acid that we produce. Um, and one of the things that it can do is if it wants to deal with this fixed acid, it can either help us throw away hydrogen ions, which will raise the pH, therefore making it more basic again, or we can reabsorb more bicarbonate ions, therefore making our body more basic. Now, volatile acid is something that, like, for example, carbonic acid, all right? It's produced when carbon dioxide combines with water. Now, this is a completely reversible reaction thanks to the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, which we readily have that on hand in the body. So what winds up happening is it winds up carbon dioxide and water come into contact with H2CO3, and then once we excuse me, I'm sorry, CO2 and water come into contact with one another, and they get converted into H2CO3. And then what winds up happening is this guy winds up breaking apart into hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ions. Bicarbonate ions cause a solution to become more basic, while hydrogen ions causes a solution to become more acidic. And this is why we refer to CO2 being a volatile acid, because if you look at this process, the arrows are going both directions at the same time. As long as you have that enzyme, carbonic anhydrase, floating around, this process will easily shift. It'll easily shift back and forth. As a matter of fact, when your cells, your red blood cells, drop off oxygen at your tissues, and then carbon dioxide diffuses into the bloodstream, some of your carbon dioxide just winds up being dissolved directly into the blood. But some of the carbon dioxide diffuses into the red blood cells, and the red blood cells have to break carbon dioxide down through the same process, and it'll take the hydrogen ions and actually bind the hydrogen ions to your hemoglobin uh, so that it can transport this thing all the way to your lungs. And then when it gets to the lungs, it'll take that hydrogen ion and reattach it to that bicarbonate ion, therefore sending it back through the process to the left, giving you CO2 and H2O at the lungs. Okay, so let's move a little ahead. I actually want to get to this image right here. We are going to see what happens when your pH begins to drop in your body. So you got a decreased pH. Well, if I have a decreased pH, then that simply means that my body is becoming more acidic. So what happened here? Actually, you'll notice that nothing evil is happening in this picture. This is natural. This is normal. What's going on is that your cells are doing their job. They're living. And since these cells are alive, they are producing keto acids, phosphoric acids, lactic acids. These are things that normal living cells produce. Also, here's the ugly part. There's different various acids in the foods that we eat. So, there's these acids that you're releasing into your bloodstream because they were in something that you ate. Okay. So you got acid from the stuff you just ate. You got acid from the trillions of cells in your body. And all of these acids get dumped, guess where? Into the blood. So now, guess what? The hydrogen level in your blood is going to drastically go up. So now your blood is very acidic. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we balance this? Because when an environment is very acidic, Your cells actually don't like an acidic environment. There are multiple metabolic processes within your body that will actually slow down or become impaired or simply shut down simply because it's in an acidic environment. So this is not a preferable environment for cells. So we've got to get the pH back up to its normal range. So what are we going to do? Well, this high hydrogen concentration actually is going to, this high hydrogen level is going to actually get excreted in the urine. Okay. Um, and what's going to wind up happening is we're going to do a transport exchange at the collecting tubules. What's going to happen is the cells are going to be stimulated by the high concentration of hydrogen that's there. And those cells in the collecting tubule are going to swap hydrogen for the bicarbonate ions. So we're going to take the hydrogen out of the blood and we're going to directly diffuse that hydrogen into uh, into the collecting tubule so that it'll be on its way out and into the urine. While meanwhile, we will be reabsorbing bicarbonate ions into the blood. And this will make a great exchange for us because once this hydrogen starts leaving the body, going and leaving the body in the fluid called urine, and the bicarbonate ions get reabsorbed into um, our bloodstream, then it's going to bring the pH of our bloodstream back up enough so that it becomes more basic in a more hospitable environment. The next video we can see here is that here's this person who has a decrease of blood hydrogen ions. So it's a basically an increased pH. So this person is becoming much more basic. So what's something that can happen to make this person become a lot basic? Well, this person's on a vegetarian diet. Vegetarian diets are not bad. You just have to understand that now you're missing out on a lot of the acids that are in those other foods. And maybe this person just took an antacid. Maybe this person just came from a cookout and they're just not feeling it. And so they took some antacids. Okay, well, that's great. They took these antacids. That's great that they're on this vegetarian diet, but we got a problem now. Maybe this person got a little upset in their stomach and they wound up throwing up. So whatever reason, this person may be throwing up. This person's on a vegetarian diet, or this person just took a whole bunch of Tums. And now the hydrogen ion concentration in the blood drops. Well, guess what? Your body is finicky and it's picky. Not only does it not want it to be too acidic, but now it doesn't want it to be too basic. So, okay, so what do we got to do to get this thing back to a normal range where when you say that it's going to be basic, you're not all freaking out? Well, first thing first, to get some more hydrogen ions into the blood. So what we're going to do is these same cells are not same cells because the first ones we looked at were type A. These are type B. And what these cells, what they'll do is they'll do a swap. They're going to just like type A cells, except type B cells, instead of taking bicarbonate ions out and sticking hydrogen ions into the nephrons or into the collecting tubules, we're going to see a swap. Now, these type B cells, what they do is they take bicarbonate ions out of the blood and then they throw hydrogen ions into the blood. Because all we want to do is we're trying to get that pH to drop back down again. Because beforehand, pH level had hydrogen ions through the roof. There are so many hydrogen ions. And so we got to find a tried and tested method to get pH down. Get pH up. Easy as pie. All we do is, excuse me, I keep mixing it myself up. We want to get pH down because if pH is down, we make things more acidic. So if we want to get pH down, a lower number, we want to make things more acidic. We just need to put hydrogen ions back into the blood and take the bicarbonate ions out of the blood, throw the bicarbonate ions out in the urine, and make sure the hydrogen ions stay in the blood. And the last thing that we have here, make sure I've got my place. The last thing that we have here is talking about carbon dioxide. I mentioned before that carbon dioxide is really good at at affecting your pH levels. If you studied the respiratory system at all at any point in time, you come to find out that the respiratory system is really good for regulating the levels of volatile carbonic acid. Right? Because carbon dioxide normally we're getting rid of it from the lungs, and as long as we get rid of carbon dioxide, we don't have to worry about volatile carbonic acid. Therefore, the pH of your blood stays normal and everything is happy. However, if the CO2 levels become abnormal, then chemoreceptors will be stimulated and we will wind up having a response or a reaction to this. So abnormal changes in breathing rate, these can wind up increasing the respiratory rate. And they'll cause expiration of elevated levels of CO2, decreased blood CO2 concentration, and then your blood hydrogen levels, they'll decrease. So what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is if I wind up jogging, first I was walking and minding my own business. Now I'm up jogging. Because I'm up jogging, I'm breathing rapidly. Let's say I'm hyperventilating or something. I'm getting rid of too much CO2. Well, now that I'm getting rid of too much CO2, there's less CO2 in the blood, and because there's less CO2 in the blood, we're going to see a serious drop um, in hydrogen levels, which means that my pH is going to go up. So, you know, one of the things is that if I just go jogging one day, I'm going to increase my breathing rate. Well, that's not just to get oxygen in, so to get CO2 out. Um, if there's an abnormal decrease in my respiratory rate, all right, instead of me running and it's making me breathe harder, for some strange reason, I'm not breathing enough. And so if I'm not breathing enough, there's less CO2 leaving, there's more CO2 building up in the blood. And so the body says, oh, look, you know what? I got more and more CO2 building up in the blood. So the pH is going to wind up dropping, which means that everything is becoming more acidic. So when you look at this image, what it does is it kind of says, okay, let's combine what we just said with the respiratory system along with buffers. And if you look at this box here, look at the middle box, the yellow box, the one with the lowercase letter B. It says physiologic buffering systems. Physiologic buffers maintain pH by eliminating excess acid or base from the body. These processes may take minutes to days, literally. So these are all processes for making sure everything is balanced. How do we maintain homeostasis? So over there to the far left, you see the respiratory system. If we increase the breathing rate, then we'll increase blood pH. Okay. Why is that? It's because CO2 ultimately leads to an acidic environment. So if we're breathing more, we're getting rid of more CO2. Therefore, by us getting rid of more CO2, the area becomes less acidic and more close to the temperature, not the temperature, but the pH range that we're looking for. If we want to decrease the respiratory rate so we can increase blood pH, because maybe our blood pH has gotten too low, therefore rendering ourselves all types of different complications and disorders. If you look to the far right, we'll see where the kidneys are trying to work to try to balance out the acid and the base levels. So cells in the kidneys, what they'll do is they help the pH to actually go up in the blood, which makes things more basic. Those type A cells, what they do is they make sure to throw away hydrogen at the kidneys and reabsorb bicarbonate ions to the blood, whereas type B intercalated help reabsorb hydrogen into the blood so that we can drop blood pH, so we can balance it out as well, because your blood may get too basic. And if it gets too basic, you'll start encountering other complications. So it's our goal to keep our blood within a balanced certain range on the pH. And then last but not least, you'll look at the top of the picture and you'll see here where we have our bicarbonate buffering system. And the bicarbonate ions, they're excellent because the bicarbonate ions are floating there in the bloodstream. And the bicarbonate ions, the more bicarbonate ions you have in a solution, the more basic that solution will become. So the pH is higher versus the hydrogen ions. The more hydrogen ions you have in a solution, the lower the pH, therefore the solution is more acidic. And that, my friends, is all I have to say about that. So make sure you go back and take a look at that. Go back and listen to it as many times as you like. Hopefully, it'll be able to work some things out, and hopefully, it made a lot of sense. And I'll be talking to you guys soon.